We have the CEO of NAMAC, Mr. Ronald Ramabulani, CEO of Agri-SA, Mr. Omri van Zyl, President of AFASA, or CEO of AFASA, Mr. Mahanjana, CEO of Grain South Africa, Mr. James de Villiers, Gianni de Villiers, sorry. Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. South Africa Weather Services indicated that South Africa is currently in the grips of the worst drought in 23 years. The last big El Nino weather pattern that affected South Africa so extremely was back in 1992. The current El Nino is worldwide and is estimated to last for several more months. Most areas of the country received below normal rainfall coupled with high temperatures during the late part of 2014-2015 summer season. The continued low rainfall resulted in dry conditions with drought being reported in KwaZulu-Natal, Mpumalanga, Limpopo, Free State, Northwest and parts of Gauteng, Northern Cape, Eastern Cape and Western Cape provinces. The Eastern Cape, Western Cape and Northern Cape are still being assessed. Agricultural production has been severely affected by the drought and field conditions are very poor and crop farmers could also not plant their crops during the planting season due to inadequate rainfall. The department repatriated 305.3 million rands from the CASP and the Lima funds towards the drought relief. Government intervened by assisting the affected livestock farmers with animal feeds and drilling new boreholes for the provision of water for the livestock. In addition to the 305 million DAF, together with Department of Rural Development and Land Reform, commit about 66.4 million rands on land care programs for 2015-2016. Land care is a community-based and government-supported approach to sustainable management and use of agricultural natural resources. The overall goal of land care is to optimize productivity and sustainability of natural resources so as to result in greater productivity, food security, job creation, and better quality of life for all. The land care program serves as a catalytic program that encourages land users to practice sustainable land management practices such as conservation agriculture, which serves as a precautionary measure to land degradation, reduced grazing capacity, and severe soil moisture loss during drought situations. Agriculture, forest and fisheries, through the Department of Cooperative Governance, made a request to National Treasury for additional funds to further assist the farmers to deal with the current drought disaster. The government, through the department, is coordinating other social, human, and community development sector departments for drought response to food insecurity through the expansion of social relief and household food production support programs. From the food security perspective, reports point out that the country's infrastructure might struggle to cope with the volume of maize imports required if a drought exacerbated by El Nino weather phenomenon further disseminates the local crop. In the worst case scenario, the nation would probably need to import as much as 4 million tons of maize. A special maize forum meeting focused on drought was held this morning and well attended and coordinated. National conditions are generally poor in the maize triangle, that is Mpumalanga, Free State, and Northwest, with Mpumalanga showing optimism on maize conditions. There is average to above average in the eastern part, but the west is showing very poor conditions. There is also concern for the animal industry due to poor field conditions. Follow-up rain is therefore needed to sustain better maize conditions in the east. For farmers, the concern is getting production loans for the next season. About 4.7 million hectares might be harvested from the current season. There is a possibility of 5 to 6 million tons import needs for both white and yellow maize, combining with the predicted regional needs such as Zimbabwe, Lesotho, Namibia, Botswana, and Swaziland. Import needs will be at 10.9 million tons, covering their commodities such as soya and wheat. The ports have the capacity to handle import needs, better coordination of port utilization and internal logistics. E.g., port should be utilized as throughput areas, not storage ports, to ensure creation of space. Transnet will allocate additional trailers to match the needed capacity. There is need for internal storage capacity internally. Industry also has a logistic coordinating team which brings on board members from other areas, and government is a player in that team. The prevailing importation concerns have been noted and will be addressed between government and industry in pursuit of seamless and legally sound importation arrangements. Government and industry will continue working together and monitoring the following: planting and production profiles, import matters, food price implications, the impact on subsistence farmers, climate conditions, and providing national updates. There is a commitment between the industry and government to work aggressively together for ensuring better and impactful relief and recovery from the drought situation. Continue to have engagement with all stakeholders regarding the drought situation to try and find solutions to this problem the country is facing. Public-private partnerships is vital in order for the country to overcome this challenge. We are continuously monitoring the current drought condition as well as spending of the allocated funds by provinces and provides the necessary advisories to farmers. We would like to call upon our farmers to be resilient, to have hope and understand that the reason we're meeting is because we're concerned. Farmers must have hope that we will do everything to make sure that they are ready to plant come the next season. We understand the condition and the troubles that the farmer finds in the morning when he wakes up and finds that there's no possibility of rain. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Minister. Before you, colleagues, is the Minister, the DG, and the leadership of the industry. We will now invite questions. If you could just identify yourself and the media house who come from, and the team will then be able to answer questions. We will start here in Tshwane and then go back to Cape Town after that round. Any questions? Yes.
Good afternoon, Minister. Karen Labuskaghni from Power FM. Just looking at these imports, when will we start looking at these imports? When can our country expect them coming into our country?
Good afternoon. I'm Tapusa from Bloomberg News. We just wanted to find out more about the import infrastructure. With regards to infrastructure, if there's been any discussions in that regard as to how are they going to be handled, by rail, by road, and how much is going to go into all that transportation. Thanks for now.
Any other question? A follow-up from Karen?
Sorry, Minister, just re-looking at the statement there. On page 3, it says that the nation would probably need to import as much as 4 million tons of maize. And then later on, it is said that we can expect between 5 and 6 million. Can we just have clarity on that, please? Thank you.
Okay. Those are the questions in this round. Or Tshepiso, you want to follow up again?
No, I'm not following up. I just wanted, within the question that I asked, just with adding to that, have the imported wheat, the maize, has it been sampled as yet? Yeah.
Okay. Thank you for this round. Minister?
Thanks. Thanks for the question. I'm sure the panel next to me were invited, all of them are invited to answer where they believe they can, because let me clarify first, Karen. Let me say that this figure of 4 million tons was before the meeting that set this morning. What we have taken into account this morning was that given the figures given, what we will import will be between 5 and 6 million. That's split between white and yellow maize. So take the latest figure, but they're not concluded. The other one was only a guess before the meeting took place. On the other question that says when, I think it is urgent, because if we are to do this process, we have to make sure that we don't wait until too late, so that the process of coordination, transportation, and delivery to other areas is done in time, and also to look at the possible fluctuation in prices. So we believe that, because already we know by what time we may run off both. We may run out of both yellow and white maize.
Can I help?
Yes, yes.
Thank you, Minister. Just we are currently in this season, and we talk about up to the end of April. We are still busy importing because we were short because of the drought situation that we had. I think we've imported something like 680,000 tons already, and it will probably run up to about 800,000 tons, let's say, end of April. The numbers that Minister is talking about is from 1st of May onwards.
The other question is whether we are ready in terms of infrastructure. I think in these meetings we have been meeting including with people we've been looking at logistics. As we have said, we are ready. That's why I was saying that we must make sure that the capacity that is at the airport is not used to store any importation, so that between ships and rail there's coordination. That if everything remains the same, we believe that we'll be able to handle all this we have put up. That means that between 5 and 6 million tons of maize will be handled.
Can I help, Tsepiso? The question, Tsepiso, in terms of the sampling, the normal practice is that you take a sample at loading. The sample gets flown to South Africa for analyzing as well. But the authorities in the foreign country, they must make sure that it met the contracts of between the buyer and the seller. And then when it gets into South Africa, then obviously our Department of Agriculture and Health must take samples to make sure it meets our phytosanitary and sanitary measures. It gets analyzed in South Africa before it gets released for commercial use in the market.
Thank you. We will come back to Tshwane. Can we go to Cape Town?
Thanks, Chair. We'll take Yanyan first.
Thank you, Yanyan Yabar for the Sunday Times. I have a few questions. Minister, every time we get briefed on the drought, it feels to me as if there's almost a feeling of unreality when the cabinet members speak, because there's very little detail and there seems to be a great discrepancy between the planning that took place and the reality on the ground. Therefore, I would like to know how much feed has government actually provided to farmers, and how much does it believe is needed? Because what we see here from the Western Cape are many lorries that are being driven up to the north of the country where the drought is more severe, but which are financed by the actual agriculture industry in the Western Cape. What is the role of the state? What has Cabinet done? Secondly, how many boreholes have you sunk? You can give us a ballpark figure, but is it like 3 or is it like 300? And round and about where? Because although this isn't your responsibility, we are inundated by information from small towns all over South Africa, from Tsenin to Alawal North and many others who do not have water. So how many boreholes have you sunk, and just about where was it done? Then are we faced with a problem because our contingency reserve was used for civil service pay increases? Is that why drought support has been so slow in coming? And then finally, I think my first point is made by the difference that you just pointed out between what you say is a guess of 4 million tons, and which is now faced by a reality of 5 to 6 million tons of maize that has to be imported. That is a difference of 25 to 32%. What kind of background does your department provide for it to be out by that massive margin? We are talking about people's actual food that they must eat. Is your department actually well equipped to run this exercise?
Paul.
Good afternoon, Minister. Paul Vecchiato from Bloomberg. Just on the importation of the maize, whilst the international maize prices have dropped so much, the rand's weakened even further. Have you worked out how much this will cost the country in terms of money going out to pay for those maize imports of 4 to 7 million tonnes? And then secondly, South African farmers have the highest debt levels ever. It's roughly about 125 billion rand they owe the banks. Have you met with the banks to ask them to maybe go easy on these farmers, come to some kind of arrangement that they will have money or cash flow to plant seed in the next season, that kind of thing? Thank you very much.
Chantal.
Hi, Chantal from the African News Agency. We're a bit at a disadvantage in Cape Town, is that we don't have the statement and we can't hear. The sound is really bad down here. So, first of all, I just wanted to know who the speaker on the minister's left is that spoke now. And then also, you were saying that are you saying that you're importing via air, sea and rail? And do we have proper infrastructure in place? And then also, when are we expected to run out of maize locally? And then from where are we importing?
And then last one, Yan again.
Sorry, it's just another call for detail. Minister, you say that we are ready as far as rail and harbours are concerned, but I mean the worry that we are not is actually lies very deep. What do you base the fact on, and what kind of figures do you have that we will be able to handle these imports in our harbours and on our rail system?
That's it from Cape Town.
Thank you, Cape Town. Minister.
Thanks, Cape Town. I think the issue of the government not maybe appearing to be reliable or clear, I'm not going to expand on, because we have been consistent. That's why we have made a point that in all our meetings we involve the private sector, so that we speak in one voice where possible. We share because we understand the fact that it affects farmers who produce, it affects the communities who rely upon the farming products. And as to how much do we need to feed, as well as how many boreholes were built, I think that information will be made available, because I can assure you this, that what we have done as a department in December, we have taken out 10% of what has been set aside for production, so that it can be used to do exactly, to make sure that we buy feed, as well as to make sure that we drill boreholes. If you have seen trucks leaving Cape Town to other areas by the Department of Cape Town, that is the amount that the department have set aside. That money equals 3.5 million rands to make sure that there are boreholes. And I can assure you this, that provinces have given us figures as to, in each province, how many boreholes were built, the amount of feed that was bought, and how many animals have been saved. And the question as to say whether the money that has been made available is less because reserved have been used for other purposes. I think the answer is the opposite, because before you can set funds for drought relief, certain processes must be followed. One, that area should be declared a disaster area by the local government. Processes must take its place. I can assure you that 5 provinces have been declared disaster areas. Processes to make sure that funding is made available have gone through. The Department of Treasury is busy working to make sure that every area has been assessed to conform to what has been explained. And I'm sure that that funding will be made available very soon to make sure that we can assist farmers. And whether the department is prepared, I think the issue of 2 figures should not be taken or read wrongly. I said that when we put the 4 million tons of maize, it was before the report we got just now from the team that met this morning. That report is because it has been based from information from the stakeholders to say that if the country is to survive beyond May of this year, we need to have 5 to 6 million. Remember, yellow maize is used for animal feed. White maize is used for human consumption. We're clear of the factors because we do have a department that does not only work alone, but shares the information with other stakeholders. We are aware of the highly indebtedness of our farmers, made worse now that they have not been able to plant. We have, as a department, been in contact with Land Bank as well as IDC to look at funding models that are made available, and even the issue of soft loans. Ideas have been given by Agri-SA and others as to how best can we assist farmers. But those we taken to other structures to make sure as government we can be able to look and assist them. When can we assist? I mean, I think Mr. Yanimola, who's on my left, Yannick de Villiers, sorry, the CEO of Agri-SA. Sorry, man, Grain SA, man. Why do I make this mistake? Has made it clear that by the end of May, we may be short of white and yellow maize. Is when then we'll have to make sure that by that time we have enough maize in stock. But as to the issue whether the capacity of our infrastructure, Transnet Rest, we have been in contact with them. We've been made aware that they are ready. We have worked out to say that these volumes will be able to be taken to the destination that they should be in, provided, of course, that everything remains the same. So we are sure that we are confident that all those things will be done. I don't know if Mr. Anybody wants to make any further, maybe Mr. Yannick de Villiers want to add anything on the issue of maize, all that.
Thank you, Chairperson. I think just to explain to people, when you talk about the current crop estimates, the first official crop estimate is only coming out at the end of February. So what we get at the end of January is how much hectares have been planted. Now, if I can show you the photos from last week when we traveled the country, the maize is this high. In some instances in the northwest, there's no ways that we can, as a country or anybody, say what is the crop going to be like. So I think it is a bit unfair to judge, how far are we out at the moment. In a disaster year, it's always more difficult to judge. So what we've done is we have got a whole survey done through the agribusinesses to say what is the hectares planted, and we took a sort of a scenario and say in the east of the country, it seems like we average, maybe some areas even above average. The potential is there for a crop like that. The east only produce about 40% of the maize in the country, mostly yellow. But when we look at the west where the white maize is produced, this is where the problem is, and there the maize is a month later than we plant in the east, and it was later in any case because of the bad situation in the rain. So our best guesstimate at the moment is we're going to need somewhere between 5 and 6 million, and this is why we judge it like that. How much is going to cost? I think if you take 5 or 6 million tons and you multiply it by the current prices, or just like 3,500 rand or something like that, you're going to get to an awful lot of money. It's something like 20 billion rand or something like that. And this is only maize. We're not talking about the 2 million tons of wheat that we're importing. We still need some soya bean meal, especially for our poultry industry and things like that. When are we going to run out of maize? We've got stocks, and if we look at the current estimate of the crop, we're going to run out of white maize by September or somewhere September, October. And this is why we need to start looking at imports and rather do it earlier than later. The difficulty is, of course, white maize is not readily available in the world. But we are still talking to government and see what is it that we can do in a situation like this to find some white maize, especially maybe in Mexico and the US. This is basically the only white maize available at the moment. So the rest of the maize, somebody asked where is it coming from? Mostly Argentina, Brazil, Black Sea countries. Those are the three main sources where we're importing currently, and they are plenty available in yellow maize in the world. I don't think that would be a problem. I think the price is the issue here. Thank you, Minister. Maybe Mr. Bonner can add.
There's a question from Paul about banks, engaging with banks.
May I just add, and I'm not going to speak to the banks, I'm sorry. First, let me introduce myself. My name is Rod Gravelet Blondin. I chaired the meeting that the Minister referred to. I'm chairman of the Maize Forum, and the meeting that was held this morning was an open meeting under the auspices of the Maize Forum Steering Committee, to which all interested parties were invited. And that included both from the public sector and the private sector. So firstly, let me say that there was a very, very good attendance and very good constructive participation. The reason or the objective for the meeting was to get as best and as most up-to-date status report of the situation. And that speaks to the Minister's point of, yes, in the beginning of December, one of the scenarios was possibly 4 million. But as we all know, the rain did not come. Hence the fact that the best estimate that we have now, and remember this is in a sense a fluid situation, is 5 to 6 million tons. That is the latest. That was the first objective of the meeting. And also then to hear from the port authorities, from Transnet, to get an update of the infrastructure. Can the infrastructure handle it? The question was asked. If everything runs smoothly, that is not to say there is perfection at this stage, there will need to be coordination. Coordination between the public sector and the private sector. And this is the commitment that was given at the meeting. As Mr. Jannie de Villiers said, the public sector has committed to see if there are any facilitation that can take place with regard, or any impediments that need to be moved with regard to import of maize. And from the private sector side, the commitment to have a committee to look at things like turnaround time, because infrastructure is not just, as the Minister mentioned, the availability of storage at ports, but the throughput. How long does it take for the trucks to come back? So there will be a need to look at coordination of storage outside the actual port. That will be coordinated by a committee. There's also a need to make sure that the trucks taking the maize are emptied or turned around. The quicker you can turn around trucks, the better you can coordinate, the easier and the better the flow would be. And these are the issues where we have a commitment from the private sector and the public sector to address these issues. So there is an acute awareness of the situation, both the gravity and the urgency of the situation. Thank you.
All right. Yes, on the issue of banks, I've said we have, as a department, engaged Land Bank as well as ITC. They've both committed to give farmers soft loans and other measures. Today, we have been briefed by Dr. Purchase to the fact that they have been engaging with banks, and there is a positive, but of course, we need to find avenues is to in what form farmers are assisted. So I would say that as a country, all of us were aware of the challenge we are faced with, and I'm sure we'll do all we can to make sure that farmers are able to plant come the next season.
Just to add to what the Minister just said, we have a drought task team. We're tasked with looking at the whole industry. We're talking predominantly about the maize industry or the grain industry right now, but there's various other industries like the livestock industry that's severely affected by the drought at the moment. Farmers have to sell off their cattle. Some of the cattle are dying on lands. And I think one of the things that came out of the discussions today and over the past month was, how do we keep our farmers in business? How do we actually get them to survive through this tough time? And one of the things that we've discussed with the commercial banks as well with the land bank, we are all part of the drought task team, is we need to look at interest rate subsidies, we need to look at credit subsidies, because in reality there's going to be a cash flow situation by June, July, August this year when the next planting season starts. And we have to make sure that the right measures are in place to actually mitigate the effects of this. Now, we've done this in the past as well. It's been done in '92. So there is a system that has worked and carried us through that time. And we're obviously asking the Minister here for sufficient funding to actually help us through that time.
Thank you. That covers the set of questions from Cape Town, all from Yanin, Paul, and Chantel. And Chantel, the statement is en route to Cape Town. You should get it soon. Can you now come back to Tshwane? And there's a question there and another one behind.
My question is to the Minister. The warnings of the drought have been
Please
coming...
introduce yourself.
Oh, Megan van Wijngaard from Engineering News, sorry. The warnings of the drought have been coming for quite some time, and in November, Water and Sanitation Minister Mokonyane stated that government would not provide any assistance to drought-stricken farmers. So why the change of heart, and is it perhaps not too late now to provide financial help?
Hi, my name is Natasha Perry from ANN7 News. Minister, I just wanted to know, what are the plans for the public distribution system of maize? Okay.
Use the other mic next door.
I suck at this. Sorry about that.
No problem.
Minister, what are the plans for the public distribution system of maize?
Bleska from the Citizen newspaper. I just want to find out if there's an estimate amount about how much this will cost the man on the street, how much more.
Yes, well, you've been watching live visuals
As to how
a media briefing by Agricultural Minister Senzeni Zokwana, that briefing coming out of Pretoria this afternoon. Well, the Minister, we've heard, has just...
Which provinces are you the most concerned about at the moment, or which province in particular? And then also, Mr. De Villiers he mentioned about 20 billion rand for maize. This figure, has it already been given the green light by government? Where is the money coming from? If we can just get more particulars around this budget that's being allocated for the import.
Okay, Namak, did you want to start?
She had asked that I answer the question that the lady had. So I'm not sure if I should do that now.
Yes.
Okay. I think there was an issue in terms of how the increase in maize prices will affect food prices. And as you know, government and other agencies measure food prices, and we have a basket of typical products that a normal household consumes. And we produce what we call a food price monitoring report that comes on a quarterly basis. One of the agreements, one of the issues we discussed today was whether we should do that on a monthly basis, so that we're in a position to inform you as quickly as possible what that impact is on other food staples. As we speak, the indications are that if we have to import 5 to 6 million tons of maize at the price at 4,500 rands, the impact on food prices on a normal basket that Stats SA uses as well will be at the region of about 25%. And if we have an additional probably 1,000 rands increase on the price, we might look at an additional 10%. But as we speak, we're looking at about 25%.
Okay, that was Mr. Ramabula, now is the CEO of NAMAC, one of the entities of the department. Can we now come back to the team led by the Minister?
Let me start with answer. I think, yes, Megan, on your question whether we have been warned. I always believe that it doesn't have very much to ask questions that seeks to contradict ministers, because I am not aware of the statement by Minister Nomvula to the fact that the government will not. And I always respect the boundaries within which we function as ministers. And what has happened then since we became aware of this, at cabinet level, an interministerial committee has been formed, led by COCTA, so that they coordinate. And the ministries are Minister of Agriculture, the Ministry of Land Reform and Rural Development, the Ministry of Environmental Affairs, so that we're able to get the updates on climate changes as well as weather changes, and as well as the Minister of Water and Sanitation. We have had many meetings, and our last meeting was on Monday. We all agree that there has to be a need to deal with the issue affecting drought. When we met at our last meeting in December, we agreed to set aside 305 million rands so that we can build boreholes, make water available, as well as to assist farmers with feed. That was done in December. It's not that we have woken up only now, and again, we have created chains to interact with industry. And I believe that we are really concerned that farmers should not believe that they are alone in this hour of need. We are all together to make sure that we create this. And what is the plan for public distribution? I think that the panelists who have been dealing especially with maize this morning as to how do we make sure that when the maize arrives in the country, it gets distributed to different areas, will deal with that. And I think the issue of how much the public will pay has been answered. And which provinces are highly impacted? Yes, initially, the 5 provinces that have been declared areas were, KZN, Northwest, Limpopo, Free State. Those were the provinces that have been declared as areas. But we are busy now trying to assess the impact on other provinces, wholly or part thereof, so that we can see what is done. Because when dealing with these things, you don't only wake up and say that province is that disaster area. Processes of government must kick in where it is declared so by the provincial level. The disaster management committee must be set up so that all processes are followed. I'm sure the other question of the amount and the rest will be answered. I would request the other panelists to deal with that because they've dealt with that matter this morning. Sorry, you are to come, Mr. Panzali, yes.
I just wanted to, on the provinces, Northwest is particularly, because they've had a previous drought, the situation there is really very challenging and in crisis. Free State, same. In certain parts of the Free State it has rained a little bit. And then Limpopo and parts of the Northern Cape and the northern part of the Eastern Cape. But I think one of our main challenges going into the winter is feed and fodder for animals through the winter time. And that's going to depend largely on the amount of rain we receive from now to the end of March. And then the next planting season will be the next challenge that we're going to face.
Yeah, just briefly on the amount of money, this is the private sector's responsibility. The buyers and the traders will deal with that, and this is and we have done that in the past. You know, we every year we do this sort of thing. This is just in a bigger scale. Sometimes we buy it locally, sometimes we import it, but the market will do that, and every, let's say, buyer have an arrangement with a bank or whatever the case may be. You know, like some of the food companies, they will buy it. They've got the funding to do that. It is now just imported instead of buying it locally. So they've got, the system is going.
Thank you. Cape Town, do you have other questions? This is the
yes, we do.
Last round, Cape Town and last round, Tshwane.
Sure. Jolene, can we kick off with you?
Hello panel, it's Jolene van Wyk from Landbou Weekblad magazine. I see you've got quite a large panel which consists of also industry players. I would like to ask from those industry players to tell us, do you think that if that government, that they really are doing enough? Whose responsibility is it? Is it government's responsibility? How far does government have that responsibility to assist farmers? And I'm talking about all the farmers in this country. Also, Minister, I don't understand what's the reason for this country not to declare this a drought a national disaster. I mean, we've got legislation, we've got a Disaster Management Act, which indicates that it says that when more than one province more than one province is declared a disaster, then the country can be declared, and then a national disaster can be declared. And also, I find it very difficult in the past 2 weeks to exactly pinpoint what government has exactly done to help farmers. We've been hearing about sinking of boreholes in provinces and so on. I managed to find out that 3 boreholes have been sunk since last year when Minister Nomvula, when she declared that how much money is available for drought relief. So if someone can just please tell us exactly what did government do to assist farmers? And I'm talking about all the farmers in the country.
Paul?
Minister Paul Vecchiato from Bloomberg. I think it was Mr. Omri van Zyl who said that in this morning's meeting you you discussed farmers in that, or discussed that there'd be a need for an interest rate and credit rate subsidy because in the situation by June or July, there will be a cash flow crunch situation. Could the panel, somebody from the panel, please elaborate on how big this cash crunch will be, what kind of interest rate and credit rate subsidies, and how much would that actually cost the national fiscus? Thank you.
Yanyan?
Thank you. I wish to absolutely echo Joylene's call for some sort of detail on what government has actually done. That figure that she mentioned on the number of boreholes sunk is also the figure we have. Surely it can't be right. But surely, Minister, you must know what the actual extent is of the work your cabinet is doing. Secondly, what I have not heard much about is the plight of subsistence farmers. We know that in the Umkanyakudi district in the north of KZN, cattle are dying and are actually just being set free to roam because those farmers can no longer look after the cattle. The farmers hope that the cattle will survive. We know from the Minister of Rural Development that 3 parts of KZN, and you were on that same press conference, which was also attended by Minister Mokonyane in November. So we know all the facts that were given there. But clearly it was not enough. What has government since done to address the plight of these, the poorest of the poor, and the people who are going to suffer most?
And that's the last round from Cape Town.
Thank you, Cape Town. Paul, Jolene, Yanin. Who want to start? DG?
Thank you. I think what we should put in perspective is that when you deal with the weather, the climate, you're dealing first with the predictions, you then dealing with the estimates, and this is why even the crops, we deal with estimates, and you keep on improving the information as you get closer to the reality. And I hear a lot of concern as the information gets improved. People get a sense that there seems to be a change. No, there is no change. As you get closer to the reality, you improve your information. But all the way you work on estimates, and as you get closer to reality, you improve your information situation. Yes, government has a responsibility to assist all of its citizens. But that we must make clear what that means. It's not that government would take over. Government assists. And that's exactly what we're doing. This collaboration, it's exactly intended to do that. The assistance entails collecting the information, providing the early warning information, creating and improving awareness. But in this particular case, Minister has already indicated two processes. The one, the information collected through the normal process in terms of the Act, through the National Disaster Management Center to the fiscus to determine what assistance is the country able to provide. In the interim, Minister has announced that there has been assistance given in the interim to provide assistance for feed and for drilling of boreholes. And Minister is addressing himself to the agricultural drought assistance to supply water for livestock. The Department of Water and Sanitation takes care of the rest of the water supply to the citizenry. And again, the supply of feed improves again on a weekly basis. These allocations that ministers talked to of 300 million, it's intended to assist the farmers in the interim, whilst the broader support from the fiscus will come through.
Thanks, Acting DG. Chairman, do you want to give that feedback from the industry in terms of whether government is doing enough?
It's on. No, I actually don't. Because it's not for me to say. I would rather comment on the fact of whose responsibility is it. And it was clear from the meeting this morning that there's a combined responsibility. And certainly with regard to the sustainability of agriculture going forward, obviously there's a role to be played by government. But I would speak more specifically to the impact of the drought. And there, when I talk about a combined responsibility, for example, we believe that there's a responsibility of government to ensure that there are no unnecessary hurdles to be put in place for imports. On the private sector part, there's a responsibility for the private sector to coordinate the flow of product. So we don't have bottlenecks at the ports, that we have a flow of product. And also to realize that, as we mentioned before, it's not just maize. Maize is the topic of the day, but it's not just maize. There's other agricultural products coming in, so there's a need to coordinate. So it's a combined responsibility as we look particularly towards how do we alleviate the impact of the drought.
Look, I think the reality is we're sitting with a national emergency here. And quick action and decisive action is needed from now until we've alleviated this crisis. And we've had the discussions with the minister, and I think the department knows this. So in terms of action going forward, it's very, very important that we work together towards implementing these things now practically, because farmers are already transferring feed from everywhere in South Africa to the Northwest and Free State and KZN, and the guys are making plans and out there, but we really need to elevate this now to the next level. Just on the credit guarantee thing, we will be in a position to give a more definitive answer by the end of this month, when the Drought Task Team will come up with our report with regards to exactly what the extent of the credit required will be.
Thank you. Can we have the Acting DG answering the National Disaster Management Center process, and then after that, Minister will answer the closing round.
The question that has been asked, why are we not declaring this disaster as a national disaster? There are processes that are being followed. To date, 5 provinces have been declared, and in some provinces, some parts. And we're following the process. It cannot just be willy-nilly that government decides it is a national disaster without following a due process. And we're going in that direction, and I believe at the right time, if the conditions, the facts meet the requirements of national disaster declaration, that will be done.
Minister.
Thanks. The question was on maybe a detailed report on how many boreholes have been built, how many livestock have been fed. For instance, Free State, Lijwaliputsa, Tabamfutsanyana, Fezle Dabi, Harib, and Mangaung Metro. 109,245 livestock have been affected. 132 boreholes have been budgeted for and are being constructed. KZN, 153,000 cattle or livestock have been affected. The number of livestock affected is 2.7 million. And the 75 dams and 62 boreholes have been identified and they are on the basis of being constructed. So the figure goes on, and I can assure you that in each and every province, they have identified from the 305 million allocated, some work has been done. And we're meeting next week on Friday, so that we can be given the figure that says, on these projections and plans, how many have been put up and how many are already functioning. So there's work being done, and I think the list is long, and maybe we will make that list available in Cape Town, even if it is for future reference. But I can assure you this, that we have been dealing with this. I want to repeat again, as ministers of the government, we have never ever passed a view that said we will not assist farmers. It's not the policy of government. As we have dealt with disaster situations in the past, we have been coming on board. That's why we have made a point that this meeting of the coordinating committee does it. And again, anybody would doubt that, there's proof today that we have been meeting. Not only for today, for this meeting. This meeting began on Monday, when the CEO of Agri-SA wanted to make sure that we can take stock, which was extended to today, where Green South Africa was part of. And I want to say that to the public, we are committed. We don't do this as a public stunt. We work behind the scenes. We make sure that farmers must not at any time doubt the fact that the government cares. We care, and we believe that we're part of the process. By the way, yesterday, I met one farmer from Lindley, Mr. G.H. Oosthuizen, who's a farmer in that area. We're able to share ideas. What made me happy was that although he has to sell some of his cattle, he is still committed by making sure that all his winners are kept fed and are ready to be used in future. So I want to say this, that we must never at a time like this have a view that says somebody does not care. We are all in this, both the private sector and the public sector. And as a government, we are committed, as I'm saying that, as these ministries that are coordinated by COCTA. Our last meeting was on Monday. The president has been briefed. The cabinet was briefed on Wednesday on what is happening on agriculture. We're all on board. I'm not at liberty as to divulge what the amount will be that will be given at the task of the Ministry of Finance when all has been done.
Thank you very much, Minister. Thank you very much to the leadership of the industry. That is the end of the briefing on the update on drought relief from an agriculture point of view. Thank you very much, Cape Town, Tshwane, and the briefing is over. Merci beaucoup.
Thanks. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
This bench, I think you are on the
You were just
yeah, no, I know what I like about it. The working relationship between the government and the industry. I think it's very good in the manage as we get the information from